You're listening to Startup Recruitment Failures. Behind every successful founder lies a tale of recruitment ups and downs. Join me on this thrilling journey and learn firsthand from top leaders on how to navigate through challenges and stay ahead of the game. We all make mistakes, but the real growth happens when we learn from them early on. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so Margaret has more than 18 years of experience in marketing, and basically, you have had two careers, right? So, one in corporate, you worked at Microsoft and Google, and then in 2015, you became an entrepreneur, founded your own agency, and worked with more than 100 companies, helping them with marketing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's true. So I went off into the entrepreneurship land to essentially Chittadina Marketing aims to help fast growth, scale up tech companies. We tend to work more with B2B companies, but occasionally it's charity, healthcare, and other larger blue chips. But for the most stake, these scale up companies that are looking to focus their marketing in a strategic way, a scrappy way, and a meaningful way. And we do that through kind of three different ways. So, one is the full agency resources if they want to have either a full outsourced team or just campaigns. We've also our newly launched our PR and outreach capabilities. So really utilizing the press to get that credibility, for your company that typically doesn't happen for a startup, but now we're able to help them in that way. And then the third way is just through myself as a fractional CMO. And so I work with clients kind of from one day a month up to a couple days a week, depending on load and interest, really.
Nice. So a lot of experience and also two different worlds you have visited, right?
Yes.
So what different, firstly, in marketing, building marketing strategy, do you see from a company being at seed level stage to a company like Google or Microsoft?
Oh, I mean, it's probably actually not as different as people might think. There's just different resources that you have. I feel that I've been very lucky within my experience with Microsoft and with Google that I've been on the entrepreneurial teams. We've been this very small teams that kind of have to fight for recognition or purpose, or we're an early test and then we grow and get more resources. So it's applicable. But as I say, you come with an already big brand name with different resources
Yeah.
available to you. The thing that I see a lot with startups is that you really need a very agile team, but the most important thing is a growth mindset. You
Hmm.
need people to understand that we are going to be moving how we are today. We're probably not going to be the same potentially in 3 months, depending on our uptake, depending on our product roadmap.
Hmm.
And that kind of open mindedness with the ability to collaborate and move quickly is really the thing that differentiates. Um, I see in different stages where, kind of my sweet spot tends to be like seed through series C. And so you see in these different investment stages how the marketing team needs to really change, right? They
Hmm.
need to adjust. And typically, what came from a very autonomous view, you then need to go into more structure. But really,
So, in general,
mm,
basically, in the very beginning, when you are seed level startup, you hire generalists, like so people being able to be responsible for more than one thing. And later on, you need to specify and start hiring specialists. Is this what you mean?
typically that's what I see. You have
Mhm.
something that you might have a more junior staff to begin with because that's probably what you can afford,
Mhm.
and that's kind of where the fractional CMO part comes in, where you can kind of get a high level strategic thinking person that keeps the ship focused in one direction. But you
Mhm.
got somebody that's very like keen. They like the chaos of a startup. They like that every day is very different. They like the autonomy. um, you can have new ideas and implement it tomorrow. There's not a lot of sign off that's required at, say, a Google or a Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of quickly do something. But what happens is as you grow, you need a different kind of structure, and it depends on people can manage the tide of that change, because some people really can go from multiple levels of growth and are able to um, I don't want to say necessarily like restrict their autonomy, but it just changes. And can you go into a process minded space? Equally, when we talk about specialization, it could be a specific skill set. So maybe now you want to bring a copywriter in house. Maybe you want to bring,
Hmm.
content manager in house. But it also might be specialization um, geographically. Maybe you're entering a new geographic market. And so maybe you still need a generalist, but in a different country that's going to able to really localize your story there and be there
Is
like
it
that.
because that in the very beginning you just test like different marketing
Hopefully,
channels and different marketing campaigns, and when you find what you really need to focus on, then you have a lot of work, and then one person is not able, so you need
yeah.
to hire
And
specific assistants.
yeah, and maybe you've also done a space where, again, you've maybe like Frankensteined a lot of agencies together. So you
Hmm.
kind of started with one agency, and then there was a new need, so you brought in a second agency, and then this, and then typically, like with a fresh set of eyes, somebody will come in and say, "Wait, like we can streamline this, and one internal person can do 50% of what the agencies are doing, or something like that as well."
Yeah, yeah.
But exactly that, yeah.
How to do when you're a hiring manager, right? So you have a great team,
Hmm.
obviously, because you're scaling, right? So,
Hmm.
but you started needing specialist people, right? Are you
Hmm.
replacing the generalist with the specialist, or how are you
So
dealing
I
with that?
Yeah, so I mean, I have two stories about that as
Mhm.
well. And I think fundamentally comes down to mindset, is what as I said before. I had one company that was a fintech, a CMO came in. It was their first CMO. The
Mhm.
team was This happens a lot around series B, I would say. You have about 50 to 70 people in place. In about a year you're going to be 120 people, right? It's going to be massive culture change, massive growth, and every department is changing. So it is a matter of saying also, how is everyone going to come in and have the collaborative mindset to say half of the company is brand new in the last couple
Mhm.
months. So I do have one story where they had the CMO came in. They were looking to specialize. There was a few marketing tactics he wanted to specialize on. So there was ways to be able to get, one was being an agency, but then we are going to get somebody else. They had someone on already there that had been kind of the institutional knowledge of the company, which is always a very difficult choice when you how much institutional knowledge you need in the scales of the startups.
Mhm.
But equally, that person was an all rounder. But I think most importantly, they had a very good mindset. They were kind of the morale leader of the team. And eventually, because there was no space for a generalist anymore within that team, that person left. Now, that person's gone on to be in a very big company, and so my feeling is that because of that morale that they brought, because of the agility, could there have still been a spot for them within the team that he
Mhm.
wouldn't have hindered the growth?
Mhm.
Um, but equally, I was at another company, and there was somebody that had built all the infrastructure. Again, was the infrastructure, was the institutional knowledge. This is how we built it. But the key difference is they didn't have a growth mindset. They really had a fixed mindset, and this is the way we've always done it.
Mhm.
And there is that spot where that became a barricade to growth for the next level of involvement that their digital needed to do. Because
Yeah.
it was a matter of being able to say, you've done a great job, you've led a lot of traffic, done all of these things. But now, because you're so fixed in this, we've always done it this way, it completely hinders the growth of what needs to be a company. Depending on the kind of investment, has to double, really, really rapidly grow. So in those situations, that those are hard chats, and that becomes more of not only a skill set, because that person was a bit more specialist, but also because of the mindset that you need to
Exactly.
weave
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
I think that it's you can always learn a new skill, right? But when
Sure.
it comes to the mindset, sometimes it could be tricky. And I'm thinking about myself and other people, like especially experienced people. And the more experience you have, the more biased you are. So you know that this worked and that didn't. And you, of course, it's own anecdotal evidences, right? But for you, it means like I have a proof that this is not going to work, so I'll better not try. Do you have you thought about it? How do you think we could change it, right? So like still try, because like time is changing, like technologies are changing, environment is changing. Maybe we could try something new, and maybe what worked now, what is working now, won't be working in a few
Mm.
months or a year, right?
Do you mean how do we change as far as taking people further along that journey of the growth?
Yeah, I mean, not to get fixed, basically.
Oh, I it's a really interesting thing because see that happening. It's something you're passionate about. Sometimes it's something that you're accidentally a fixed mindset about because you've seen this idea. I mean, this is what I find so inspiring about startups and scale ups is that typically the founder is still involved. So they are telling you what their vision was and then they've brought a new product to life, and I find that very inspiring to like be a part of somebody's vision that was just an idea and now it's something that can serve
Hmm.
excellence, right? um, but you see these little ways of getting tripped up, and it's just a reminder of, I mean, I'm quite adaptable to the clients and how each of them think. And so it's trying to figure out what motivates each person. So if somebody's quite motivated by data, I tend to kind of try to gather a lot of data and say, look at how this is the lost opportunity cost
Hmm.
through the data. If somebody's quite motivated through client feedback, you kind of quietly get client feedback to say what it is. But it's a matter of trying to see what matters most to them in that space.
Hmm.
And the problem is as well that you can't necessarily, it's really hard, you should not be able to coast at one of these smaller companies. And that's something as well that you can, I've seen that as well. People have been able to kind of coast for a long time, and it's not right anywhere, but especially at a
Yeah.
smaller company, every set of hands has to really matter.
Yeah, yeah. Jobrely now offers full cycle recruitment services, from creating a job ad to presenting shortlisted candidates after initial interviews. Fill out the project brief, and candidate profiles will be sourced for you. Connect your LinkedIn account, and a personalized messaging sequence will be sent from your LinkedIn account to all of the potential candidates. And after initial interviews, a comprehensive scorecard of shortlisted candidates will be presented. Visit jobrely.com and start a free trial. Okay, what other hiring mistakes or stories do you have?
I think it's that aspect of also understanding like how much growth somebody wants to do. Are they going to be here for X amount of time? Do they want to do the whole run with you? So therefore, how are you going to compensate them correctly? I think that the thing that comes to mind is I was lucky enough when I left Google, I still had them as a client,
Mhm.
and we were doing a really interesting project about 9 years ago where they were looking to really hero fast growth scale ups. And so I had the lucky opportunity to talk to a lot of scale ups to kind of get their story and see,
Mhm.
how could we champion them in a more public way. And the thing that was really astonishing is after about, I'd say, 30 interviews, I'd say about half of the people all mentioned that they wish that they had hired a more senior person 6 months earlier than they had.
Hmm.
And it is
Okay.
this struggle of you have, because more senior people cost more. And it is this kind of resource allocation from a budget perspective of saying, okay, is this now the time to bring in somebody that's quote unquote more senior, has more probably process?
Mhm.
Do they have more uh, vision of how to do it? I think that those fresh pair of eyes can be very helpful. I mean, in recruitment, the first 90 days where you can still be a shift of the vision, and why do you do this process this way, and why do you do this to
Mhm.
help efficiency, really does matter. um, but you can see that kind of churn of now do we do it? Now do we do it? And it comes down to budget and priorities. And then it also comes down to, in that kind of scale up space, it's odd. This, visionary CEO is probably trying to find a new office, and that takes up a lot of
Mhm.
time. And all these other things kind of get in the way, or the newest client's about to sign, and you have to think of it like that. So I think
So you
about that a
mentioned
lot.
that this
So
decision, like to start hiring juniors and just then regret that you didn't hire a senior. It's because of the budget, right? But if you really calculate, so by losing 6 months, you can lose way more than paying the salary for a senior person.
And I think that that's also a really interesting thing that happens in this with the scale up staff, is who have been very frugal in their spending. Fair enough, right? If they're
Mhm.
doing a bootstrap space, or even once you, again, depending on your funding, have to prove the effort of every pound spent. But then that time when there actually is budget, there is always an interesting time to say, no, no, we can spend this, and this is going to have a bigger impact. Now we already know, as you said, we've done the testing, we know what works, we know where to put the eggs
Mhm.
into which baskets. But I also think that that space is also why the fractional ecosystem that's been evolving in the last few years is also a benefit to this
Mhm.
space, because you can get that all-rounder person inside, but then still have a senior person when you, at a rate that you can afford, but it's just not a full-time space. I have
Mhm.
very mixed feelings about well, obviously, about like full-time and fractional and part-time, and the impact, and whether or not, that's a different conversation. Time is a measure of impact, right?
Yeah.
Versus, I've spent many years doing this, so I can know it's going to be a shorter amount of time to
Mhm.
implement something because we already know how to do it.
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. And yeah, and so looking at the C-suite level, like
Hmm.
so we talked before that it's also like a very difficult question or even dilemma, right? Whether to hire a C level as a fractional person and
Mm.
then of course integrate them, but agree on to work on a certain project or certain goal to reach, versus hiring C level manager full time.
Hmm.
And then what happens if there is like, I don't know, personality clash or some other things, right? Because we're talking now about the seniority level and skills, but the teams are not about the skills and competences. It's also a lot of personalities who have to match each other, right?
I think it's really hard. I don't have a quick answer, to be honest. I think that in my dream scenario of any kind of hiring, which is nearly impossible in how
Mm,
modern offices are put together, is if you can figure out a way to do some sort of project together, to actually have that practical time together of,
mhm.
how do you problem solve? How do I problem solve? How do we disagree? Because we should be able to disagree, but in a, professional way.
Yeah.
And so it's about bringing in those conversations, I think, without the absence of actually being able to do a project with somebody before you hire them. Is there an opportunity to kind of, I was actually saying this to another startup the other day, that there was this issue. It wasn't necessarily C suite, but it was a 14-person company. So one person changes the entire culture. And so it
Hmm.
was saying in the interview process, actually, it's a creative agency, could you actually do a brainstorm that's part of your interview? Because that's mimic something that you would happen in your
Hmm.
day-to-day business. So it's, how do you mimic those kind of interactions that are real under stressful environments, to then be able to see if people, quite frankly, get on, which is
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is a more important thing, I think, at any company, but definitely, as you say, in smaller companies as they scale. Um, and the unfortunate truth is, you sort of have to combine the pedigree and experience, but also to turn those interviews into a more practical conversation to see, in this situation, would you react like this, etc., to see that meet. But until you start working together, you really don't know. And it causes a lot of disruption.
Yeah, yeah. A good test. I think it's just to spend time together, like
Yeah,
hiking, like choose a more difficult hike and then see the reactions or decision making in which path to choose and whether to, turn back or continue going.
that's
But yeah,
interesting.
not everyone has time for it, right? And especially in startup world when you need to scale now or never. So you don't have time for walks or for brainstorming sessions, right? So yeah, it's pretty tricky. Have you seen any situation like that when the C-suite was hired and due to the personality reasons, there were some complications?
Yes. um, no, yeah, I've seen that, and it is again a situation of um, sometimes it's just a clash. The person coming in has a specific view. They've
Hmm.
done this efficiencies in this way. This is the imprint that they do every single time. And then again, it depends. It typically comes down to how involved the original founders are in the C suite and how much they can let go. And again, we say into the um, fixed or growth mindset of, okay, now I'm able to delegate this. And so I've seen a situation where somebody's come in and maybe it's not as um, gentle a transition that the company was ready for. And it just didn't deliver, and over time they were asked to leave. I've seen another situation where
What was the reason in this situation?
in that situation I just think it was like maybe they're getting ready for the next round of funding. When you get into the higher rounds of funding, you are thinking about somebody more institutional. And then is this person going to adapt against again at the next level of institution? Do they dig in too deep? That's again stopping the progress that you need to do. And
Hmm.
is it again fundamentally, do people just get on? Do you want to have a laugh with that person after work? And that kind of space. So that was one, was a more gentle. There was another situation where there was a founder um, still involved. I think they were still self-funding. In theory they were a chairman and
Hmm.
supposedly a lot more hands off, but they weren't. And so it was then the other um, C-suite person joins in. They have a vision. It's not different to what the chairman's vision is. It's just
Hmm.
going a different route. You use the hiking analogy, right? And so
Yeah.
it necessarily is like, I just want to go on this path. We're still going to reach the same spot. And it was fundamentally just a disagreement because there was that power play where the chairman could dig in their heels and say, no, it's going to be this way or the highway. And
Mm.
unfortunately, that's what happened. Um, so what's very important in these situations, it's just about getting on. It's not about skill, it's not about delivery. It's
Yeah.
just people, it's too small of an environment to hide. And you just say, do are we integrating as well? Because the other thing that happens when you get to a certain level, again, you're not just bringing yourself in, you tend to bring yourself in and then maybe a few people that you've worked with many times. Like we all have our kind of work hives
Hmm.
that buzz around with us. And so is it like, and those all have like a very specific culture. Those people already are coming in to say we work a specific way. We're joining an organization that's already existed. They've already come up with their norms of working and processes or are going through that travels. And how much does the whole hive kind of integrate
Hmm.
well, and can you establish trust quickly
Yeah.
for that to
How
go
to do
through?
that? Because like your case you just gave, right, is
Yeah,
apparently if you have a trust, you allow the newly hired C-suite to go that road they have chosen, right? Because you
right.
hired them because of the expertise and the experience. But apparently you're a founder, it's difficult to let it go, and then you need to trust someone, that someone
Yeah,
new came to your company and knows better, right? So how to achieve this?
I think what you just said is really important. Is that it's not that I know better, I know different. You've been really excellent in this part of your business, your past proof of concept, you've done all of these things. I'm just now, as I say it, the founders standing where they are, they can see to the end of the street. You're bringing in somebody that has already seen two streets down. So it's
Mm.
just a matter of saying like, look, I've already gone on that path. I can tell you what we're about to run across. But then
Hmm.
it's just again, it comes down to the egos of who wants to dig in and say, no, 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 this is the only way to do this. and then picking your battles between it. I mean, so for how I work with like my the different clients that we have, it's this thing where I'm very integrated and embedded into the client, but I come with my own set of people and processes and so forth. And our but we come in with a very, even though I'm quite embedded, we come in with a very services focus, human focus space. So we're there to make it easier. We're there so you can go faster. I'm going to bring up something that I see saying, hey, I've seen that before. A big discussion, for example, would be like MarTech. Okay. I think
Mm.
that marketing technology, I have a theory that you can tell a lot about a company's culture based on their MarTech setup.
Okay,
I'm
that's
I'm I'm
interesting.
work
I never thought about
I'm
it.
I'm working, fully on this vision, but I can kind of see what happens. There was a company a few years ago. I'm like, what's your stack? HubSpot, that's it. And you're like, okay, they're direct, they want to keep things simple, they want to keep it in one
Yes.
place, that aspect. You talk to another company, okay, well, we have this over here and this over here, and they don't talk to each other yet. And we have a new CRM that's like a startup-y kind of CRM. And you're like, oh, this is chaos.
Yeah.
Like, and you're saying, okay, well, how quickly can we evolve this? And are you willing to evolve your tools to meet where you're going? And that's a big financial investment. And it's a huge time investment. Like, it's really
Mm.
hard to convince clients to say that we need to change their tools from one thing to another. But it's
I
a
can imagine. Yeah, it's a big headache.
it is, but it's about setting yourself up for the next stage, because what happens is if we set it up correctly in your next round of funding, because you're going to, more often than not, you're funding for tech development, product development, and sales and marketing.
Mm.
And so if in product development, you can see has a little bit more grace as to how the roadmap goes. Sales and marketing have to deliver right away, and that's the other thing. So if you're setting up your baseline well, you can then scale quite quickly.
Hmm.
But
And I have a
yeah.
question. So as a fractional CMO, right? So you come
Hmm.
to the company for a certain like limited period of time, and then you build a team,
Hmm.
and then you leave. What happens with the team?
So there's different spaces. So I personally like to really grow with the company if I can. So it's nice doors if you can get in sort of easy early, where you're typically doing some sort of web project or some sort of project first, and then it's proving, again, it's a very practical interview. So they say, okay, you've come in and brought some value, and do that.
Hmm.
Typically when there's a moment where we're saying, okay, it's time to bring in somebody uh, who's, again, maybe they've seen two streets ahead that I haven't seen, and got more kind of experience for a different set of growth. What happens with the set of teams is you can see that either it's really up to the person that comes in. I like to kind of work with the person and say, this was the vision, this is how I set it up, this was where we're going, you're obviously going to move it this way. Hopefully you can have a very human chat, because this is the difference, right? I'm not necessarily being fired from a space, it's just they're in a new growth stage. So
Yeah.
hopefully you can negotiate a little bit of overtime to just say, this is how it was happening, this is where I was trying to point the ship. These are the Hopefully that's a good time with the team to reevaluate and say, hey, was there something that you've wanted to grow into? Did you want to specialize in something that you haven't been able to specialize yet? This might be the time to bring that up. Or have you noticed something, there's another growth area within the business that maybe you've spent a lot of time marketing one part of the service or something, you're saying, actually, I'd like to go over to that product team.
Hmm.
So it is an opportunity to not necessarily fear, but speak up and say, can I take something on more? Can I move a little bit differently? But unfortunately, it really comes back down to the vision that the new CMO has decided to do.
Hmm. Okay, and how is this transition going, right? So someone hired and build a team, and then the new C-suite is coming and overtaking the team, right? So
Yeah.
is it always smooth or?
No, it just comes down to personality. Like, look, my style is very much, humor based. Like it's trying to have, let's have a good time while we go through it. It's about, I really try to encourage them to get face to face time. We're all working from home a lot more, but that, night at the pub, with or without drinks, just that quality time together can actually see a lot of the personalities and how people will
Mhm.
go. I think it also comes down to the support of, when you're doing that C-suite change, the support of the CEO to say, this is why this person has
Mhm.
come in, right? In the instance of the story I said before about the person with the fixed mindset who was really digging their heels in, I'm not sure it was as well articulated that the new CMO is trying to solve these issues, so that person has to let go a bit more to be
Mhm.
able, so that everybody succeeds, right? And so it really comes into that group leadership as a whole, trying
Mhm.
to say that this is, we were pointed here, we now have different resources, we're now shifting to be over here, and this is why this person has come in, and you still have a place here. We've managed a couple of senior leadership changes, and the questions that typically come up is just like, is my job safe?
Mhm.
And I think be honest to say there's probably going to be some changes. We're going to try to keep all of the people on the team, but we have to all get settled in, because if there's all these, as I said, first 90 days sessions happening here, 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 and here, everyone's going to have an opinion for a while until it kind of settles down.
Mhm. Okay. Nice. Nice. Great. And so, to finish up, could you share like the main or the key advice for other startup founders starting the scaling process? So they have proved the concept. Now time is to scale and maybe look for new people or team, what to start with or what to avoid or not to do.
I think that there are two things. One, at every stage, you want to hire problem solvers. Who is
Mhm.
somebody that's going to come in, see an issue, be in a safe environment to say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? So creating that psychological safety for new thoughts is super important. But then it's that second aspect of, when that person is says, hey, here's a problem and I have a solution, let them solve it. The delegation portion is really, really difficult with so many founders to kind of let go of this area of the business, because it sometimes feels um, it feels very precious. Maybe this was your idea, you've brought it to market yourself, you have a very small co-founder team.
Or too much at stake, right? You have to control
There's too much.
everything. Yeah.
Exactly, there's a very controlling mindset, but there's equally this it's difficult, because I always think that there's a lot from the marketing side of it. So I want to be clear, from a marketing scaling side, I always feel that there's a lot less at risk than the founder might think it is. And it's simply because they've
Mm.
probably been doing fewer marketing activities.
Mm.
So now that you're saying, okay, we're going to add one strand of it, it's going to be more, it feels very risky to them, because this is yet another thing they haven't done before. And they spend their life every day doing things they've never done before, right? So
Mhm.
finding that way to quickly understand how you personally build trust is saying, I need these things to happen to build trust.
Mhm.
Come in, tell the person you're hiring, I need this to build trust, and then let them do it. Let them bring your, you're probably bringing in someone more
Mhm.
specialized, someone more senior, and they're there to help you and support you and the vision go to the next space. So I heard, I'm went to a talk last week where Shonda Rhimes was speaking, and she said more elegantly than what I'm trying to say. She says, I write my to-do list, and then I look at that to-do list and see what can somebody on my team do, and I write a new to-do list and I give it to them. And
Mhm.
so I'm just, if you can let go in that bit and understand that you're not letting go of your business, but you're enabling it to scale and go faster,
Mhm.
delegation is a wonderful thing.
Okay, nice, great, great. Thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing your insights and for participating on this podcast.
A pleasure. Thank you so much, Indra. It was great.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe on the media of your choice. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And if you need help with your recruitment, please visit jobrely.com.